It has been 3 weeks since we've taken to the high banks of some of the fastest oval racetracks in North America, but in just a few moments, the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series round number 5 starts at Homestead. The break is over. Let's go back to racing.
$10,500 richer. Two-time NASCAR legend is your 2013 NASCAR iRacing. It's going to be Humpy winning the race, and it's going to be Conti taking away his first NASCAR 2017 NASCAR Beginner Series Championship to Ryan Luza. Federer is a 4-time champion of the NASCAR Beginner iRacing Series.
Welcome here to RaceSpotTV. We get to bring you live coverage of the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series, round number 5 at Homestead Miami Speedway. Randy Chin, the Nolan Rempel, and Hugo Louis bring you all the action for this one. And Nolan, been a fun New Year's break for everybody, but I think everyone pretty much around the sim racing world at the moment, with the likes of Christmas and now New Year's in the rearview mirror, everything's starting to get geared back up for 2019 World Championships coming up, of course. We still have a lot of leagues to cover between now and then.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more to come, but it's one of those things where, you know, you can't wait to see what comes next. And let me tell you, I can't wait to cover this first race, the 4th race technically, for 5th race actually, sorry, for the Kickass Snacks Xfinity Winter Series. It's one of those series that's just been fun to watch. It's been fun to broadcast and commentate over. I can't wait to get back into things here.
Now, before we get too deep into this thing, let's take a quick peek of the last 4 races in terms of what we have in championship points. And coming into this 5th race, Brandon Bowie leads the way with 191 points. Tie currently for 2nd with 2 drivers who have won a combined 3 of the 4 races. David Comstock has won 2, with Trey Edson winning 1. Top 5 round out is, of course, going to include Anthony DeBarro and Jason Jacoby, but of course they will get shuffled out depending how this one goes. Only other driver to have won a race thus far is Larry Pace, who is down in 9th place. But rounding out your top 10 in total is going to be Jacoby, E.G. O'Rourke, Mike Kelly, Nick Cohen, Larry Pace, as I just said, and Chad Coleman. The only driver, I think, in that list of top 10, Nolan, that you have to be really surprised has yet to come away with a race win is going to be that 5th place runner of Jason Jacoby. He's had the speed to be really competitive, but just hasn't had the luck, hasn't had the consistency. He's consistently at the front of these fields, but he struggled to get to the checkered flag in and around the group and in the positions that he ran around the midpoint of these races. So, as we work our way forward, only about a minute and some change left currently in qualifying here. As not sure what has happened to Nolan. We may have actually lost him here. But in terms of what we're looking at on the schedule, do a quick review of that, of course, as well. First 4 races, Las Vegas, Atlanta, Auto Club, and Daytona. In order there, that was won by Comstock, Edson, Pace, and then Comstock once again. We have Homestead, of course, here tonight. And Chicagoland, Talladega, and Pocono are the 3 races that are coming up. As we wait and see, you see the current qualifying results up on your screen right now. Toby currently having that pole position by about 100th of a second over Steve Sheehan. Sheehan actually put in a very good qualifying performance for what we typically see. Tim Johnston, Nelson Rivera, and Trey Edson currently rounding out that top 5. So only a couple drivers left to actually run qualifying times. Joey Gattina, Pat Colby, Randy Yoakum, and Sean Dower. 4 drivers who have yet to actually hit the track. With now under 30 seconds left to go, I think we're going to be hard-pressed to see any of them get out there on the racetrack and actually put in laps. So what we're likely going to see here is, as that clock winds down, those drivers just pretty much get out there and take whatever they can get. Scott Simley put in a late qualifying effort of a 31.514. That puts him at 10th quickest. But as the clock counts itself down to 0, all the drivers will be politely booted off the racing surface, and they are going to get the chance to go right back onto it and get a 2-minute countdown. Let's go down your starting grid here for the 5th round of the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series here at Homestead. Pole position, the driver who has struggled to come away with strong finishes consistently, but has been a part of the action and led the majority of these races. The 39 of Jason Jacoby will roll off on the inside of the 66 of Steve Sheehan. A couple stream machines out there on that front row. Timothy Johnston and Nelson Rivera will make up row number 2, with Trey Edson and Anthony DeBarro on row number 3. Chad Coleman and David Comstock will make up row 4 with Bobby Terrell and Scott Simley on row number 5. Ben Kilcrease and Bobby Wetzel on row number 6 with Nick Cohen and Robert Gillenwater on row number 7. Brian Boris Cook and Larry Pace will make up row 8 with Mike Kelly and Chris Cabot on row number 9. E.J. O'Rourke and Nick Silver on row 10 with Mitch Rollo and Doug Roth rolling off from that 11th row. Brian Wertman, John Lockhart, they find themselves 12 rows deep with Dan Denayer and Shane Ewing on row 13. Joe Hudson and Joey Gattina on row 14. Patrick Colby and Sean Dower will make up row 15, and Randy Yoakum will be all by himself in that 31st position on row number 16. But we just wait now for that iRacing safety car to roll itself off of pit lane and onto the racing surface, and all the cars and all the drivers follow them out there. It will be a 1.5 mile trip around the racetrack before we get ourselves to green flag racing here in 2019 for the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series here on RaceSpotTV. The field rolls off. Steve Sheehan in that outside row will do as they traditionally do here at Homestead and just go directly onto the banking. The inside rows will often just stick to that access road. All 31 cars work their way down the back straightaway. Everyone being anxious and getting ready. David Comstock, I think, is going to be in a very, very comfortable situation here in this one. Really has all the momentum in this championship, in my opinion. He doesn't currently head the standings. He's only really a couple points out. 3 points to be exact, but he comes in with 2 of the 4 race wins and is consistently qualifying well and finishing well. And of course, he has all the momentum following the way he dominated that race in the Daytona Road Course to end 2018. But in the field, as their way through corners number 3 and 4, it's going to be Jason Jacoby in command of it, who wants to take the momentum from that number 42 car away. The iRacing Ford Mustang Pacey car comes on a pit road. Jason Jacoby gets on it, wasting no time, and we are green in the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series here at Homestead. So through turns 1 and 2 for the first time, of course, here at Homestead Miami Speedway. Variable banking from the bottom of the racetrack all the way up to the top. So this track will generate very good racing up and down the entire 90-lap duration of this race. Is now through 3 and 4 for the first time. First side-by-side fight really happening for about 5th and 6th on back. Anthony DeBarro and Timothy Johnson, they're currently fighting the USAA on the inside. Coors Light up top. And that Coors Light Camry is going to have the position at the line as they nose into 1 and 2. The entire field pretty much trying to get themselves single-filed out best they can. Couple side-by-side battles up and down the field as DeBarro will pick that spot up coming off of turn 2 and down the back straightaway. See Steve Sheehan actually get out of the slipstream with Jason Jacoby working down the backstretch, maybe defending that inside a little bit from Nelson Rivera. Nelson wasn't overly close there, so not a lot of pressure being given as things keep up in the mid-pack. See one car peel off all the way down to the inside off the pace. E.J. O'Rourke very slow and coming to a stop down on this inside row. Not sure what he had. Maybe a technical problem of some sort as he's going to get that car back wound up and rolling now. Maybe just surrounded by a bunch of drivers that are going really, really hard, really early that he wanted to get away from. Through 3 and 4 now for the third time of 90, and it's going to be Jason Jacoby with the early advantage here. Last time by, he already worked himself out to about a half-second lead. It's closer to 6/10 now this time. So Jacoby slowly stretching this gap, but we've seen this sort of ebb and flow of the tires and whatnot in some of the other races. Some of the drivers work themselves a little bit harder in the early laps to stretch a gap. Some of the others, like the Steve Sheehan, Nelson Rivera, and any of these other drivers sort of in this second group right now, maybe playing things a little bit more conservative on their rubber. And that's going to give them a bit of an advantage here in about 10 to 15 laps time. We've seen that almost all of the oval races thus far this season. Also saw it a little bit on the road course race as well, as everyone has gotten themselves pretty much single filed out. I see a couple cars running that upper groove. Ben Kilcrease is one of them in that GoPro Ford Mustang. Cycled in just behind Bobby Terrell and Nick Cohen as they screech down the back straightaway and in towards 3 and 4. Quickly get themselves single file, and he's going to run that low line as Kill Crease here through 3 and 4. You see the Valvoline car of Bobby Witzel and Brian Boris Cook with a very polite looking Judge Judy on the hood, running a little bit higher line through that sector of the racetrack. Everyone now pretty much gets themselves single filed out. Now I believe we should have Nolan back. Nolan's a very single groove racetrack at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Homestead is, it's one of those tracks where, you know, there really can only really be one groove if you want to keep things going early on in the race. If you can manage to find some way to work things out in the later portions of the race, it would be great. But at this point in time, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of these guys just running single file, trying to work together here. And, you know, like you said, people might be running conservative right now. They might try to, you know, get a bit of rubber down on the track, and then they'll figure out how to make their moves in the later portions of the race.
Jason Jacoby continues stretching his way out to a nearly 9/10 of a second advantage. We'll get an update on that time once he comes across the stripe, but it's 8/10 of a second last trip around the racetrack. Steve Sheehan is going to be working the rearview mirrors, watching Nelson Rivera behind, who's yet to really think about making a move here. And actually, Steve brings a little bit of time back in towards Jason Jacoby that last trip around the racetrack. So things, oh, we got car around in 1 and 2. Who is that in the middle of 1 and 2? I see 2 cars, the 4 machine of Robert Gillenwater and also the 96. That is Mitch Rollo. First caution of the night is going to end up coming here, I think, off a little bit of a racing incident here. And it was the 4 car that gets sent around as Gillenwater. Who is it that got in the back of it? It was Larry Pace. Just drove in a little bit deep. The way Gillenwater was running that corner, trying to really diamond it off, and the 96 just judged wrong where that 4 car was going to go. Pretty much T-boned that 4 machine, and that's 2 cars now with heavy damage here in this one.
Absolutely, but let me tell you, good job on the rest of the guys behind them for somehow avoiding that incident, because yeah, we got 2 cars with big damage, but you just saw on the screens there, that car was right in the middle of what you just called to be a 1-groove racetrack at the time, so that could have been much bigger, and we could have had almost half the field caught up in that incident there, Randy. So props to all of these guys for making their way around that.
Field works their way in towards pit road now, just about 9 laps into this race, coming to start the 10th one. And Nolan, one of the big things here talking about this one is, of course, the race distance. We're typically used for, you know, when we see these 1.5 mile racetracks, typically we see lap counts somewhere in the 120, 130, potentially up into the 140 range for this series, and really a lot of the series that we broadcast on the sim in general. These guys will be running such a short 90-lap race. It's going to take a little bit of the strategy out of it, and really from here on out, it's likely going to be pretty much a one-stop race, I would imagine. Just a couple pretty much 40-lap stints to get to the end from here. Of course, we still have a couple laps before we go back to green flag racing. But it's going to be really a lot more of a sprint race in this one, with a lot less strategy, I think, working to it than we typically see in this series. Jacoby should win this race off of pit road comfortably.
And just as you say that, Jacoby makes his way off of pit road, doesn't lose a single spot, manages to keep his lead. I can definitely agree with you there on how this could throw some of the strategy into the wind, but I feel like whether we see a one-stop race from here, it really depends on if we get a whole lot more cautions left in this race. And it can be kind of hard to judge early on. We're only 10 laps out of the 90-lap race that are complete so far. I feel like we kind of have to wait a little bit before we can actually see what the strategy is going to be. I'd say we might be able to expect 2 stops, though. Most of them would be under caution if we get a couple more cautions in this race.
Well, cautions, of course, are an unexpected thing that can always change the strategy, but you always need to work off what you know is coming up, and we typically see 40-lap runs on the field in these cars. Talking about the fights off of pit road, Nelson Rivera had a very good pit sequence, picking up 2 spots, both on Steve Sheehan and Timothy Johnston. The big standout on that pit road sequence, though, the only driver, I believe, in the field opting for 2 tires, Mike Kelly may have done so as well, looking at where he started this race. Brian Boris Cook takes 2, picks up a good chunk of time. Because of that, that's going to put him all the way up into P number 5.
Yeah, just the fuel, and he's already up to P5, as you just mentioned, but remember, a lot of these guys, like Jason Jacoby and a lot of drivers behind them, they took tires. So yeah, you have a shorter stop and you move up positions, but you can lose all of those in one lap or less even if you don't play your cards right on the restart, just because these guys are going to be on fresher tires than you are. I am noticing Robert Gillenwater, though, right there in the back, he never fixed the damage on his car, so he's still got front end damage, he's got rear end damage as well, and that could play in not to his favor for sure as they come down through 3 and 4 for the first restart.
Have to wait and see. Probably just got as much as he could while trying to stay on the lead lap, and pretty much going to have to cruise out there until he gets another opportunity to come down pit road and get through repairs. Pace car's back on a pit road, and Jacoby, there must be some manufacturer talking there that the Ford Mustang peels off and the other Ford Mustang on pole gets to the throttle, and he is clear through corners number 1 and 2 with nearly 10 car lengths over Steve Sheehan and Nelson Rivera. Steve is going to work that bottom line on the 22 and try to get his second spot.
Oh, 4 wide behind them! They were just 4 wide for a second. I am really sorry to cut you off there, Randy, but for a split second, I saw drivers like Chad Cohen, Anthony DeBarro, Mike Kelly, and Scott Simley. They all just went 4 wide for a split second to the back, and they're almost looking to do the same thing on the front straightaway. Not quite there, but I am so sorry to cut you off there.
So momentarily 4 wide as Nelson's going to hold on to his spot. And they're still side by side here amongst the leaders. Timothy Johnston as well as David Comstock are the two fighting it out for that one. Steve is going to get clear and pretty much pull away as Timothy Johnston's going to work that slightly higher banking on the top side. Gets a lot better run coming down the back straightaway and is nearly clear of the 42 of Comstock going into 3 and 4, but he's going to use it through 3 and 4 and actually pick that spot up. And I see Trey Edson making some moves as well. Brian Boris Cook on the 2 tires, already down 2 spots from where he picked up this restart, Nolan, on that 2-tire call. So like you said, maybe not working out for him very advantageously with everyone on 4 new tires around him.
Now, even those 2 tires, and I know a lot of people might not think that it could make a big difference because we're still so early in the race, but even just by like 3 or 4 laps, it can make such a huge difference, and we're really beginning to see that play into the rest of the field's hands here as he has dropped back a couple spots since the restart. You wonder how many more spots he's going to have to drop back still before he manages to find a groove that can work for him with the tires he's got, and so he can start hopefully making up those positions again.
Yeah, it's going to be something we have to keep an eye on here over the next couple of laps. Jacoby is continuing to just punch out fantastic lap times and stretch his gap. He's nearly 0.2 of a second quicker last trip around the racetrack over that second place runner of Nelson Rivera. Going to pretty much keep that theme alive and go 1/10.5 quicker this time around the racetrack. The 20 machine, though, Chad Coleman is in a fight with the 12 of Scott Simley. You also have Brian Boris Cook involved in this as well. The driver has been looking, going for the 2-tire call. It's slowly sliding backwards, and we're going to find ourselves in a nice little 3-car scrap because of it. Also have Anthony DeBarro in that 27 Coors Light car, and Mike Kelly shoves the nose on the 27 for a moment, does not commit to it though, so as they peel off of turn 4, the 20's not going to have the momentum he needs, and that's going to allow Scott Simley to work the top side in towards 1 and 2, and all the while DeBarro has nowhere to really go to try to press this advantage he has, or maybe use this 20 car as a pick, or somehow get around him down the back straightaway. DeBarro has a run, and he's going to slot himself on the outside row. Will he follow Simley through 3 and 4? Answer is going to be no, as the 20 car will have the advantage to the center of the corner, but in theory the 12 should be better from middle off, running that upper groove and being a little bit less aggressive, getting that car to the mid corner.
This is where we can see that second groove started to form in, Randy. You know, you got the lower groove, which is definitely very good on entry, but then you've got that outer groove as well, which is what Scott Simley's trying to work with, and he's getting such a good run off his corners that he's always just a little bit ahead of Chad Coleman on the exit of the corners, and it makes it so Coleman has to work his way all the way through, as we see it again off of turn 4. And another reason for that could be the fact that these cars do have a powerful side drafting effect, and that could be what we're starting to see here as well, as Anthony DeBarro actually looks like he's going to try to follow Scott Simley on the high line, maybe see if that can work a little bit better for him, but he just opened up the door for Mike Kelly on his rear to get right in there. But again, just like we talked about, Kelly can't get in there, and he has to get himself right back in behind DeBarro once more.
That's the way it's really seeming right now, is Navarro is still doing his best to work this sort of groove and work this little pack. Going to try to get a run here, and I think he's got a good run of momentum, but still kind of lifts out of it early down the back straightaway. Doesn't quite pick it up, but Simley's able to get clear of Chad Coleman, so that's going to be a spot officially held now by the 12, and that's going to pretty much be the switch that I think Navarro needs to flip on a little bit more aggression. Down the back straight, does not get the exit he needs, and Chad Coleman's going to be able to stretch about a third of a car length, which is enough for the 27 to not really be in a situation to be able to maybe even fight or pick that spot up. Let's see now, can Navarro get the run off of turn 4? Answer's gonna be kind of, sort of, maybe working the slipstream. Might be able to shove a move down towards turn 1, but no, not nearly close enough. As if you watch behind this 27 car, you can see all the different grooves these drivers are starting to run. In fact, just look at the mid-pack. Everyone from about 6th on back, expanding out to different parts of the racetrack. About a third are running low, third are running the middle, and about a third running up top.
Brian Boris Cook is one of those drivers that's trying to, it looks like he's trying to go high in 1 and 2, and he tries to kind of have a lower line in 3 and 4, and that is a bit of an interesting strategy. I think there's a little difference in the radius of the 2 corners for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Not enough to make a huge difference, but definitely enough that it could have some sort of effect. And unfortunately for Cook, though, every time he runs wide in 1 and 2 like he's doing, it allows Scott Simler to close right in, but then you're going to see here, he's probably going to take a lower line here, I'd imagine. Yeah, there he goes, right down to the inside, and he has to force Simler to kind of back off a little bit. So it's a bit of an interesting strategy, but whatever he's doing, it looks like he's definitely working for him. And those, the 4 fresh tires that everybody else had on him, or I guess the 2 fresh tires when you think about it, they're not helping out the field anymore, and now they're in just as much of a mess as Brian Boris Cook is.
Yeah, tires are pretty much heated up, and the newness of them, so to speak, is definitely worn off here, as we see a couple side-by-side fights behind start heating up. Mike Kelly and Bobby Terrell were nearly side-by-side down the back straightaway as they work their way through. Navarro still looking for openings, though, on Chad Coleman. Nearly shoved the nose out in front of who we're watching. You see that car for the 11th spot. Bobby Terrell get a bit of a run, and he's going to come from 12th up to that 11th spot now. Mike Kelly's going to fall back at least 1 and maybe even 2, as he's got Nick Cohen down on that bottom groove, and the main Helm Auctions car side by side between a couple of Toyotas, and they're going to streak down this back straightaway. And let's see, will it be high line or low line in 3 and 4? Because we've seen everyone running up against the white line here in 3 and 4, and we're going to see that bottom groove, I think, reign supreme. That 2 car of Mike Kelly is going to get a lot of momentum coming from that steeper bank top line, and look at the run he's able to get down the front straightaway. He nearly clears the 21 before they get to turn 1. Once again, down the back straightaway, these two will continue their fight. Then towards 3 and 4, the 21 still working that lower line of Nick Cohen. Mike Kelly up top, not quite able to hook up 1 and 2 nearly as well as he needed to, and that's going to pretty much give that spot to Mike Kelly for now. Excuse me, that's going to give that spot to Nick Cohen for now, is actually out in front. Bobby Terrell and Anthony Navarro, they're duking it out. See the Hippies Paint Shop Geico Honda car. Camaro with Honda graphics. It's not often you will see that, as Bobby sticks down to that low line. That Coors Light Camry up top, still just trying to work that line. You see all those cars running that lower groove, though. Tells me that middle line is not really where you want to be, as neither of them get a great run off the corner, but Navarro gets the better of the 2, and he's going to be able to hold on to that spot, hold on to this 10th spot over Bobby Terrell. And actually the 27 just goes right back to that sort of middle line, right through corners number 1 and 2. Meanwhile, though, just checking back in out in front, we know what was happening with Jason Jacoby, and the fact that he was driving this car hard, was able to get himself early out to just a little bit under about a 1-second lead. This is what we were talking about during that first stint, with drivers being a little bit over aggressive, potentially just killing the tires. Nelson Rivera has been able to bring that gap down to under 0.2 of a second, and they're pretty much trading lap times, with Nelson Rivera essentially being the one pushing that actual pace and being the quicker of these two cars. And they headed towards 3 and 4. Two different lines going to be taken, and the double deuce is going to check down to that bottom line in 3 and 4. Nelson Rivera wants to go to the race lead. The challenge is going to be there, but the 39 of Jason Jacoby will hold on to it for now, working that momentum up top. Let's see what they do through 1 and 2. They will once again run different lines, but Nelson doesn't drive it in nearly as hard. But I think Jason gets a little bit tight on that upper groove through 1 and 2. That's going to pull them nearly alongside, but Jacoby once again running that upper line is going to have the legs down and towards 3 and 4.
Yeah, but this is definitely heating up here. Like, this is what we could be seeing, especially later on in the race, you know, when you got these two different lines that are like just fighting it out, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Like, Jacoby, he got such a good jump off the race start, off the restart that we had, but now that the tires are a bit more worn in and now that the grooves are being a bit more heated up and there's more of them now, not just one, he's been reeled back in, and now he's actually having to really work hard to defend that position. And if he gets as tight as he did a lap or two ago, he's going to be in some serious trouble position-wise.
He's done a good job. He's been able to clear Nelson Rivera and actually put a little bit of time on him. As Jacoby gets tight through 3 and 4, he has to lift out of it, and he may not have just one taker, he might have two. Rivera's going to check the bottom line in towards turn 1. Lifts out of it a little bit early. He's going to be pretty cautious. Doesn't drive it in too deep because he knows Jacoby's fighting tight. Jacoby nearly finds the wall, and that's going to give the lead to Nelson Rivera. Steve Sheehan all the while is watching this, and he is just licking his chops, hoping he can pick up some more positions. Unfortunately, was unable to take advantage and use Jacoby as a pick, but that's going to move Sheehan into the second spot as well, and he's very close to that rear view mirror of Nelson Rivera. We do have one car that's blown up, by the way, and come on towards pit road. That is Robert Gillenwater, the 4 that was involved in that incident that brought out that first caution. But this 3-car scrap for the race lead has turned into a 2-car one, as Steve Sheehan is there on the rear view mirror, the 22.
And just a little while ago, we also saw Mike Kelly actually strike the inside wall in front straightaway. I didn't manage to see what happened. It looked like he might have just gotten tight, slapped the outside wall, and then drove it back in and hit the inside wall. Nelson Rivera now with the lead. Now he's going to have to fend up against Steve Sheehan that's right behind him. And Jason Jacoby is, of course, going to be looking for every possible line he could get to try to get those positions back. And we have just seen Robert Gillenwater back out, so he's done for the day.
And that's going to be it for Gillenwater. I think, as we expected, already having big damage and losing the motor in such a short 90-lap event. We were already pretty much approaching halfway. No time to really ever come close to getting that car repaired. But Steve Sheehan, he knows his day's not done yet, and he's going to put the pressure on this number 22 car going in towards turn 1. Steve definitely seems like the quicker of the two, but he's being very patient in terms of how he's setting up and is going to plan this move. He has the run now coming off of turn 2, brings in a little bit of time, runs that car on a slightly wider arc, but down the back straightaway, just not applying the pressure that I think he's quite able to. Maybe taking a little bit better care of the tires. We know that we have at least one pit stop left, and actually as we work through 3 and 4, Rivera's going to get a little bit tight. That's going to open the door for the double 6 of Steve Sheehan. They're going to be side by side at the stripe for this race lead, and Rivera's going to give it up going in towards turn 1, lifts well out of it, and that's going to move Steve Sheehan into your race lead for the first time.
That was a bit of a wise move from Nelson Rivera. I think he's recognizing that there's still a lot of laps to go, you know. You got more than half the race left, so yeah, just give him one position. You can easily fight it back. I definitely agree with you. Nelson Rivera looks like he's definitely trying to save the tires because he's definitely not putting any pressure on Sheehan for the lead at the time, so I definitely think that he is going for a more conservative strategy at the time because he recognizes we still got a pit stop left, so if I can make these tires last a bit longer, I could actually get a good run at him at the later stages of the race. Jason Jacoby, he's still struggling back there to even hang on to third place as he's fighting that out now with David Comstock, the winner from our last race at the Daytona Road Course.
Talking about that pit stop, we're pretty much in the situation, Nolan, where if we get unless we get a caution within the next about 10 to 12 laps, this race is really just going to be a one-stopper because, you know, any later than that, you know, it's you basically get to the end from about lap 45. You can do about 50, 40 some odd laps in fuel in these Xfinity cars at most of these 1.5 mile tracks. like the Charlotte or Vegas or even here at Homestead, you typically see a very similar fuel range. It might sort of get out by a lap or two, but it's not going to vary too much. So we're pretty much, just towards the end of that fuel window, getting to the halfway point of this race, and I think getting beyond it. So unless we get a crazy caution now, you're pretty much not required to come down pit road another time. The only reason that we'd see more pit stops from then to the end of the race would be if we get cautions, in which case everyone's coming down just for tires.
Absolutely, and speaking of tires, look at Jason Jacoby, who's almost burning them up on the high line there. He seems, it looks to me like he always gets so tight going into the corners, and that could be a very, very huge concern for Jacoby if Comstock can find a way to get that inside line to stick, because they're always side by side coming off the corner. But of course, Jacoby with that momentum has to force Comstock back in behind him, but it's not going to be long before Comstock finds a way to get on Jacoby's inside and make it work. And of course, Trey Edson is going to be trying to follow Comstock through the corner to bump Jacoby down another spot.
This is something we've seen all year Jason Jacoby do as they run through 1 and 2, is he likes to push early, the early goings. He doesn't like giving up any amount of time at all to be able to conserve those tires, and we're seeing him suffer from it again here today. He's now fighting with that 42 car and David Comstock. It's one of those things that I think if you're Jason Jacoby, you almost have to kind of look at the way your races has gone, Nolan, because the more I think about it, the more I've seen him do this. I think it's been every race. He gets out near the front of the field, he pushes really, really hard, and there's never a point where we're watching Jason Jacoby really scream through the field or apply pressure on someone who has worse tires in front of him. He's always the one who seems like he's used this stuff up and is getting pressured from behind.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be a pattern that I'm beginning to notice as well, Randy, and we can see it here again. Like Jacoby, he got such a good jump off the restart. He was almost a second ahead of all these guys, and now look, he's been bumped down from first. He's all the way down in third. He's being threatened for third place now. He could be going down to fourth, fifth, maybe even sixth. In a short time here, as it does look like it just got better from there. Comstock once more made it through. He doesn't have the momentum anymore. Trey Edson's now on his inside, trying to get it in there as well. Above, just as I predicted, Jason Jacoby down to fifth.
And that Kickass beef jerky number 10 is going to show the nose down in towards 3 and 4, and well, he's going to show him as well pretty much a complete pass. But Jacoby having that upper line will have that momentum advantage off the corner, but going in towards turn 1 here, Trey actually doesn't drive that car in nearly as hard as I would expect, and Jason actually doing a very good job on that upper line with the way he's really struggling tight, doing a good job holding on to that thing. But you see the way that Jason drove that car in really did sort of hurt his exit just a little bit and gave up a lot of the advantage that upper line will give you. Now through turns number 3 and 4, I think we'll see Trey just about get the run he needs, and there it is. He's going to just get clear of Jason Jacoby and pick up that 4th spot. And now Jason has one more car that he really needs to worry about before their really scheduled pit stop in Timothy Johnson here in the 28, currently running in that 6th spot. Looking down low on Jason right now, they stream and head down the back straightaway.
I think there's a very fine line between trying to run the high line to get some momentum off the exit and just straight up running wide and losing a lot of speed and ground. And I think Jacoby's unfortunately crossing the line to where he's just running wide and losing a lot of time, as he's almost bashing the wall in every single time. I'm surprised he hasn't hit the wall, except for, of course, the one time when he lost out on the lead. So I will give him that. He is really good at not hitting the wall at the outside line, but he's just pushing it in too wide to really be able to run that high line properly. As here we go, Timothy Johnston gets the run at the inside, because unfortunately Jason Jacoby just didn't have the momentum, because he's just scrubbing off so much speed when he gets tight in the corners.
The 39 car lifts out of it, and the 28 will pretty much make short work of that, but not quite, as Anthony Johnston very loose off of turn 4, nearly in the grass, somehow is able to hold on to that thing. But the USA Camry is going to be losing a huge chunk of time, and in some ways that's exactly what Jason Jacoby needed. Although I think in some ways here, Nolan, even though he holds on to that spot, I don't think this really changes much for Jason, because I think regardless of how that actually kind of panned out, he's in a situation where I don't think he can push too hard just the way his tires are running. We've seen a number of cars really struggle here, both either tight or loose, just the way these tires have worn in, as the field's going to get ready to come across the stripe and take the cross flags for halfway here. 45 down, 45 to go. Jason just kind of needs to cruise, just barely keep, he just has to keep tabs with his lead group in front of him. and just make sure he doesn't push himself into some sort of mistake.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. He's going to have to wait for the pit stop window, I feel, and then he's going to have to make a very decisive early pit stop. We actually see a move for the lead up here. Nelson Rivera tries to drive it in deep underneath Steve Sheehan. Doesn't manage to get there, or maybe he does because he's right on the quarter panel of that Chevrolet Camaro as he does drive it in really deep into turns 1 and 2. Can he manage to get the move done? The answer is yes, and he will clear, and we now have a new leader, Nelson Rivera. Unfortunately, he's going to have a little bit of a problem, perhaps, in Mitch Rollo, who's a car that he's trying to put a lap down. That's just in front of these guys.
A one-lap car, and the fight's still on for second, though. The 42 car of David Comstock from 8th on the grid is mixing it up with the race leaders, currently doing it for second with the 66 of Steve Sheehan as they work down the front straightaway. Down low is that lime green, black and gray Camaro, just peeking that nose back in on Steve. In towards 1 and 2, going to have the slightly shorter line, and you see the 10 of Trey Edson trying to follow David through, but Steve's going to work the momentum up top as they come down the back straightaway for the 48th time tonight. And David's going to just about hold on to that and just drop back. So Steve will hold on to his second spot for now, and Nelson's out there still in front. But with the first lap traffic of the day out in front of them, let's see how they deal with this. Of course, that's a very damaging Mick Rollo we saw involved in that early incident early on in this one.
Now, there's both that, and I think Mitch Rollo will probably get out of these guys' way very, very cooperatively, because he has been a good 15 miles off the pace. There he goes, ducks to the inside, and actually slows down to let all these guys through. He's like, I do not want to be caught up in another incident today. And that will allow all of these guys to go through, and our three-way fight for second continues. It does look, though, like David Comstock might have won out on the fight for second. For now, that is. Of course, we still got Trey Edson, who's right behind him. And we actually have Timothy Johnston, who's going to go down the pit road. And right behind him is Anthony DeBarro, who gets really loose, and he actually overshoots the braking exit. And I think we also had a little bit of content behind them from Nicholas Cohen and not Randy Oakham, excuse me, and Ben Kilcrease.
A handful of cars on pit road right here. I think it's going to be Timothy Johnson who's going to be the big beneficiary here. So 40 laps to go, and everyone's going to see those drivers peel off on towards pit road. And here comes the response. Nelson Rivera is on pit road. Who is that as well? That was Jason Jacoby, also is on pit road. See the way the two of them get themselves combined. Actually, just looking at the gap, Jacoby seemed to pick up a huge amount of time coming on towards pit road over Nelson Rivera. I don't think Nelson was expecting to come down pit road when he did, and I don't think he got the entry he needed, because I think Jacoby definitely found a lot of time on him just on that entry sequence. Let's see how the actual pit road battle actually cycles out. Rivera will be in the box first.
Yeah, Nelson Rivera in the box first. Question is, can he be the first out of the box? I think actually Jacoby might be able to win out here, because one thing I have noticed about Jason Jacoby, he is really decisive on his braking points with these pit road markers. Unfortunately, not decisive enough, as Nelson Rivera does end up coming out in front of Jacoby. He is within the range, though, that once all the pit stops cycle through, we shouldn't see a terribly huge change in terms of positioning on the rest of the grid, but you never know. Things could really change in these short pit stop windows, as this should be, I would expect, the last pit stop we'll see of the day, unless, of course, we get a late caution.
And caution will be the only thing that will pretty much trigger another pit stop. The 42 of David Comstock, by the way, is down on towards pit road. That pretty much leaves Trey Edson and Steve Sheehan, your only drivers who is part of that real lead group, still out there. Bobby Terrell, Scott Simley, Chad Coleman, Larry Pace, Bobby Whitfield, Ethan O'Rourke. The 8 drivers that pretty much still owe us pit stops. Doug Ross is out there, Patrick Colby, for the most part. Most of the leaders have come down pit road. So Comstock works his way onto the racetrack, and he is notably ahead of both Nelson Rivera and Jason Jacoby. And that is actually big news, because with them coming down a lap or two earlier, the entire point of that is so that they can potentially gain time and potentially pass those drivers who are out there on pit road. I think it's a big mistake on Nelson Rivera that he is not anywhere, pretty much, he should be clear of the 42 of David Comstock with that extra lap he has on that new set of tires. I think Nelson lost a ton of time on pit road and should really be about 10 car lengths clear of the 42 right now.
Yeah, both him and Jason Jacoby. We saw Jacoby gain a lot of time on the pit entry, but I think there's two explanations here. Either you're correct and Nelson Rivera just wasn't decisive enough with the braking points on pit road That or maybe they came down a little too early. So early, in fact, that it turns out they didn't get as big of an advantage as they thought, and that's what allowed David Comstock to stay right ahead of these guys. There are a couple of guys that still do pit stops. I believe Timothy Johnston, no, actually, excuse me, no, Timothy Johnston is not one of those cars. He was actually one of the first ones to come down. Bobby Terrell comes down from 3rd place. He's going to be cycled back rapidly through this field as Jason Jacoby just barely avoids running into the back of Chad Coleman. And we actually got a spinner on pit road, it looks like. Okay, excuse me, never mind. That was actually Steve Shaheen locking up the brakes as he tried to get down to the pit road speed limit.
And just Steve Sheehan, the only one, just a quick lockup. He's actually come on towards pit road. That pretty much leaves all of our drivers out there except for Trey Edson, who is part of that lead group, who have yet to come, who is the only one who has yet to come down pit road. So Trey, he needs to go pretty much the entire opposite direction here. So these guys, they came down pit road at the pretty much exact earliest that they could to probably get their way to the end of this race. For Trey Edson, he needs to go polar opposite Nolan in order to make this work. He needs to stretch this fuel and these tires as long as he can to have the freshest he can at the end of the race. He needs almost a 10-lap delta over these drivers that have already pit in order to make this work. And just for reference, here they come. Just on the rear view mirror of Trey Edson is the likes of David Comstock, Timothy Johnston, Nelson Rivera, and Jason Jacoby. So these are the 4 leaders getting ready to cycle past the 10. And the 10 gets very loose, I think, trying to sort of facilitate that path and let them through.
I looked away for a second there because I did not want to see Trey Edson spin around and collect a bunch of these guys. Good job on Trey Edson for managing to get that car back under control. I definitely feel like Edson, he does need to, I can't remember if he's come down for his pit stop yet, but if he does, I recommend he might want to do that right about now, because all of these guys out here, they are just blazing past everybody that hasn't come down for their pit stop, and it's blazingly obvious who hasn't when you look at the speed difference and the lap time difference between a lot of these different drivers.
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. Just some of the slower cars going past these guys that were 1 point leading this thing. But let's keep an eye still on the likes of Jacoby, Johnston, Rivera, and Comstock. Comstock has been able to get away from that group of 3 drivers. Rivera has been able to get around Timothy Johnston, but Jason Jacoby is there and in the wings, ready to make moves. The first one he's going to have to do something with is Timothy Johnston, and he has a bit of a run as they work down the front straightaway. Will he show a nose anywhere through 1 and 2? Sort of half a nose up top, but they're pretty much going to run the same groove. So no way for Jason to really pick up any time here just yet as they come off turn 2. What's going to happen this time? Bit of a half a nose down to the bottom, but nothing going just yet. And let's see what happens here. Upper groove. So for Jacoby, no real way to get around this Johnson car just yet. And considering the fact that Timothy came down, I think 1 or 2 laps a little bit earlier than Jason did, that could be a little bit problematic. But the 39 just works the patience. He gets the opening he needs going into turn 1, and he's going to drive it right down to that white line. And he's going to pick that spot up that he needs.
And we just saw Comstock working his way past Patrick Colby. Just got that spot done and dealt with. Jacoby is going to have to defend here a little bit for maybe a corner or 2 against Timothy Johnston. About David Comstock and his lead, though, you did mention Comstock is getting a huge lead, and you're absolutely correct. He's getting a massive lead on these other drivers. Don't forget.
Because these guys work their way through. David Comstock working his way down the back straightaway. I'd love to not forget what Nolan was going to tell me, but unfortunately, it's technically continue as Comstock pretty much a 1.1 second lead over Nelson Rivera. Jason Jacoby still working that spot with effectively 3rd or so on the racetrack over Timothy Johnston. Johnston trying to fight back, but really just not having the positioning or the pace to really be able to do so, as we still wait for Trey Edson to make his call on towards pit road and really make his visit. He's yet to come down pit road, and this is going to make things pretty hairy for him. As you take a look at the other drivers who you'd really put, quote-unquote, in that lead group, the 42 of David Comstock, only about 25 seconds back, so that's going to cause him some issues here in the 10. That's going to give you an idea of the sort of gap that 10 car is going to have to deal with and have to run down when we eventually get to the end of this race. So the drivers who have still yet to come down pit road in order going to be Trey Edson, Chad Coleman, Larry Pace, E.J. O'Rourke, and Bobby Wetzel. So basically your top 5, the only cars who have yet to come down pit road. Everyone 6th on back has made their stops. Right now it's David Comstock who's the big beneficiary based on the pit road sequence. Nelson Rivera did a very good job and currently running 2nd best of the pitters. Jacoby cycled his way into 3rd and had, I think, the best pit stop sequence of all. Timothy Johnson in 4th, and Anthony DeBarro rounds out your top 5 as they work their way through here on lap number 64. Well, if you're the leader, starting lap number 65 of 90. A lot of traffic, though, for the 10 car of Trey Edson. Huge gaggle of cars that he has to let through. Ben Kilcrease, Bobby Terrell, Scott Simley, and Nick Silver all in that sort of mix. He just pretty much has to go to the high line, lift out of the throttle, and let them all through. Luckily for him, they're a little bit quicker, so they're not going to be really checking him out in front. But for the 10 of Trey Edson, still not committing to pit road. Now the question you have to start asking yourself is Trey leaving himself enough time to be able to run down these cars out there in front of the field? One driver running down on towards pit road, that's going to be Chad Coleman. We currently are, working towards 20 laps to go in this race. Only 25 or so laps till the end of this thing. So if you're Trey Edson, you have to think of it this way. You almost have to count backwards here. You don't want to pit so late that while you have really, really new tires, you won't have enough time to pick that gap back up and bring those gaps down to those guys in front of you, because he's only working a 20-second or so advantage when he eventually comes down on pit road. Those guys are nearly going to be a full lap ahead of him. He's only going to have about 20 laps to be able to bring that entire lap gap back down and in. So Trey once again right past that pit road entry. He's being ever so light with that throttle pedal. I don't think there's any way, by the way, just taking a look at the actual when he had the pit stop. One stopping this, of course, from that caution is pretty much impossible. So I don't think there's any way that that's what the 10 car working up his sleeves here as we take a quick peek at the movers and shakers. Right now, once again, looking at those top 4, you have to take those all with a grain of salt because those drivers have yet to come down pit road. David Comstock, though, has had a very good race, and those 4 drivers eventually peel back off onto pit road. That's going to be a net gain of 7 spots for David Comstock, but a very good race for him. That'll put Nelson Rivera as well up a couple spots. So we can get actually a refresh of the movers and shakers when eventually those 4 cars out in front come onto pit road. It'll give us a little bit more accurate an idea about who is where, as E.J. O'Rourke is actually going to come on towards pit road. Of course, teammate with Trey Edson, so that should give us a bit of an idea of this 10 car is likely come down pit road right now, and here he comes. Trey Edson peels off onto the access road, and that Kickass Beef Jerky Camaro needs to have a picture-perfect stop to have any hope of holding on to this one, Nolan.
Well, absolutely, and races are won and lost in pit stops, especially in races like this. I feel like if Trey Edson can potentially get a fantastic stop here, he could manage to work his way back up. Obviously, he's going to have to lose out on the lead throughout the pit stop, but, he could potentially make his way back up if he can play his cards exactly right, but he's got to get it right. Here he is, down into the pit box, doesn't lock it up at all, doesn't overshoot, so he's already off to a great start.
Yeah, but I'm still curious if he's going to have enough laps here, because he's really leaving himself inside of 20 laps to make this strategy work, and we'll get an idea of what the gaps are. David Comstock right now, by the way, is coming off of 3 and 4. He will already actually have the race lead coming to start lap number 71. So Comstock works down the front straightaway and crosses the line now. Trey is peeling off back onto the racetrack and pretty much exiting turn 2. So for Trey Edson, it's about 3/4 of a lap that he's going to have to find some way, somehow, to reel this lead back in. Oh, we got a car around the 61. Yeah, that's Joe Hudson. Bit of a spinner, and that is not going to trigger a yellow as he has spun down off of the racing surface. The 61 IT Coalition car, Ford Mustang, finds the inside wall and has been forced to take a tow. So we will stay green despite that drama. That could have been a stroke of luck that we could have seen Trey Edson really take advantage of, but unfortunately, yellow flag does not come out. That is going to pretty much make him continue to do this under green. And talking about the strategy call here, Nolan, it's not just that he has to reel in the likes of Comstock and Rivera and Jacoby, but he has to do that while driving through all the slower traffic in front of him. And even though he's going to have, potentially a 1.5 second advantage every single lap, as we get a quick peek at the spin that we just had here on replay, he's going to have to get around all those slower cars. And yeah, it's not going to cost him a bunch of time on a car-by-car basis, but in aggregate, that's going to cost him a huge amount of time getting towards the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely, and it will cost him a lot of time, and it's one of those incidents where you almost wonder, would it have been more beneficial for him to come down when everybody else was going down on the pit road? That's one of the big questions for me. One quick note on the 61 car having his little spin. The reason for that he was so far down in the 8th there was because he actually had his motor let go on him going into turn number 1, so there was smoke coming out of the car, and he just got in the apron and spun right around. So that was a bit unfortunate, luckily not to get collected by that other car coming out of the pits at the time. Larry Pace is actually working his way up. He's actually working his way. He just got past Nelson Rivera and Ija O'Rourke, also looking to get past Nelson Rivera at this time.
So we've been green and bringing you full coverage for the entire 74, coming towards 75 lap duration of this event. We are going to catch our first breather here and bring you a bit of RaceSpotTV fan immersion. Closest battle with any position up near the front of the field I see is the 39 and the 28. Let's ride on board with Timothy Johnston looking forward as him and Jason Jacoby duke it out for third and work their way through lap traffic, coming towards 10 laps to go in this one. We will... As we hit 10 laps to go, things have not gone the way Timothy Johnston would have wanted, as he has lost a good chunk of ground 2, Jason Jacoby, and Steve Sheehan has managed to take that 4th spot away and is now fighting with Jason Jacoby for that 3rd spot as they peel down the back straightaway and in towards 3 and 4. A double 6 car trying everything he can to get the spots made up late. Qualified, of course, 2nd on the day and is fighting for 3rd. He's going to take a peek low coming off of turn number 4. Of course, a slightly later pit stop strategy for the 66 car is really paying off. Through 1 and 2, to the bottom goes the 66, and Jacoby's going to fight with what he's dealt with all day, and that's tight. And Steve Sheehan is going to just about pick that spot up. He's half clear, working down the back straightaway and in towards 1 and 2. The 66 should be able to take the air off the nose of that 39 Ford Mustang, and through 3 and 4, actually. Jacoby doing a great job up top to stay even, but it's not going to be enough. Steve Sheehan will take that 3rd spot away at the line. Can Jacoby make something of this? Meanwhile, we have to keep an eye on Trey Edson. He has been close to putting in the lap times he's needed to make this pit stop strategy we've seen work, but I don't think it's going to be enough, Nolan, as it's a 13-second margin. He really needs to put in about 2 seconds a lap from here to the end of the race, and he has not been achieving that lap time, only about 8/10 to a full second quicker than Comstock every trip around the racetrack. I think right now Trey Edson is hoping maybe for a top 5. That's going to be about the best I think he can get from here.
He's either going to be hoping for a top 5 or he's going to be hoping for a late race caution. Because, of course, if we get a caution now, that could definitely change everything as Comstock gets really loose off the corner to try to avoid Dan Denayer. Just about collided with each other there as Comstock trying to work his way through lap traffic. He's, of course, currently running in the lead, almost good 2 seconds, actually, ahead of Nelson Rivera. I'm thinking, this is just a personal opinion, but I am thinking at this time that David Comstock, he could be able to come out here with back-to-back wins.
As we keep an eye on that, Timothy Johnston as well is keeping the pressure up on Jason Jacoby. They were side by side off of turn 4. Jason got a slightly better run though, was able to get clear, but Johnston's not done yet. Better run off of turn 2. Let's see what he can maybe make happen going in towards turn 3. As they come off turn 4, they're going to be getting 5 laps to go. So if Trey Edson was relying on any sort of caution to maybe make this possible, that's going to kill his dreams, because inside of 5 laps to go, any caution flag here is basically going to end this race.
Yep, so Edson's going to have to hope for a top 5 at this point, because he's just too far back, unfortunately, to work his way up to first place at this point. Johnston getting another good run off the corner on Jason Jacoby. He's trying to make this stick here. Jacoby, once again, is getting really tight in these corners, and that's just because he puts on all the pace on the fresh tires, burns them through, and then he has to pretty much conserve late in the runs, exactly like what we're seeing here. I just saw another look to the inside. Okay, excuse me, disregard that. That was a lap car trying to get out of the way of Nelson Rivera. And Jason Jacoby still fighting it out here with Timothy Johnston. Johnston might try to get a good run here on the bottom line, kind of go for an over-under. It might be looking like, unfortunately, he's not just there, and at this point, I think Johnston might have just used up his only opportunity to get by Jacoby as well.
We're going to have to wait and see as we are in the dying moments of this motor race. It is going to be 3 laps remaining when they get towards start-finish right now. David Comstock working a 1.5-second lead over Nelson Rivera. Steve Sheehan a further 1 second back off of Nelson. And then Jason Jacoby and Timothy Johnston, they are, well, you don't really need the time. You can see how close it is right here, right now. Down the back straightaway, Johnston is going to try to work this momentum any way that he can. He needs to pick this spot up because they are not that far ahead from a charging Trey Edson, but it's important to keep in mind that Trey's pace has somewhat plateaued a little bit and fallen off from the 1 to 2 second per lap advantage that we saw a little bit ago. Popsicle sticks in the air though, 2 laps remaining in this race, and that's going to be the trigger that needs to pretty much happen as Jason Jacoby is trying to pressure on Timothy Johnston. Timothy's been able to get the advantage right here, but is Jacoby done and over with? Down the back straight and in towards 3 and 4 for the penultimate time. Will Jacoby be able to make anything happen here as David Comstock is going to come off of turn 4 and take the white flag here at Homestead? Lap traffic potentially checking up Timothy Johnston, but actually it may work as an advantage as he's going to have a car between himself and Jason Jacoby. for this white flag lap. Down the back straightaway for the first time, for the last time, and our focus has to shift to the first car. The 42 of David Comstock drives through the center of turns 3 and 4 nice and calmly. He's not going to work himself too hard, and he will make it 3 wins in 5 races here at Homestead Miami Speedway. So the rest of the field pretty much coming through in the order they were. Jason Jacoby not able to make anything happen there on the 28 of Timothy Johnston. That lap car really couldn't come at a better time for Timothy. The entire field will finish this one out. We got a little bit of drama here. The post race 21 car comes spinning after crossing the start finish line. I think that may have been a little bit celebratory. Not the greatest race in the world for that 21 car. Nick Cohen, a bit of damage on that machine, but that is overall the entire field already done and already dusted. It's going to be the 42 car for the 3rd time this season. Is going to peel off on towards the front straightaway, and David is going to burn them down. So with that, as David Comstock celebrates his 3rd win in 5 races here, pretty much taking a stranglehold on this championship, let's take a quick peek down your post-race results here at Homestead. David Comstock works the strategy to perfection and comes away with the victory here at Homestead Miami Speedway. Nelson Rivera, very good run from him, comes home in 2nd. Steve Sheehan put in a fantastic qualifying effort, and it paid off. The 3rd place finish was Timothy Johnston and Jason Jacoby rounding out your top 5. Bobby Terrell comes home in 6th with Scott Simley 7th, Anthony DeBarro in 8th, Trey Edson in 9th, and Chad Coleman rounding out your top 10. Brian Boris Cook is in 11th with Ben Kilcrease in 12th, Nick Silver in 13th, Nick Cohen in 14th, Larry Pace in 15th, Shane Ewing in 16th, E.J. O'Rourke 17th, Randy Yoakum in 18th, 19th is Bobby Wetzel, and Doug Ross will round out your top 20 with Brian Wertman, Dan Adair, Chris Gabot, Jonathan Lockhart, Pat Colby, Mike Kelly, Joe Hudson, Mitch Rollo, Joey Gattina, Robert Gillenwater, and Sean Dower rounding out the 31 car field today. Do not go away. Post-race coverage will be coming at you in just a couple of moments time here on RaceSpotTV.
Alfala is $10,500 richer. 2-time NASCAR legend is your 2013 NASCAR iRacing done. It's going to be Humpy winning the race, and it's going to be Conti taking away his first NASCAR
2017 NASCAR Beginner Free Series Championship to Ryan Luza. Alfala is a 4-time champion of the NASCAR Beginner Free iRacing Series.
Welcome back here to RaceSpotTV for the post-race show of the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series race number 5 here at Homestead Miami Speedway. And well, we have to talk to the man of the hour, Mr. David Comstock in the 42, able to come from relatively deep on the field of 8th place finish, and in such a short race get his way up front quickly. First of all, David, really taken a stranglehold on this series thus far. 3 wins in 5 races, a 4th place finish there in the 2nd race in Atlanta. The only time you've really struggled was at Auto Club when you came home 11th. Does it feel like you're the most dominant driver in the series thus far? Because that's pretty much the way it seems.
Yeah, I feel like we're pretty good. There's a few other guys that are quick as well that if they, the strategies that we were running and stuff, I hate to say with Trey, he had a really good strategy there, and I was hoping to battle with him to the end there because we were pretty even. Guys like him, Steve Sheehan. Those are all real quick guys, and we just got real lucky tonight with pit road. We had a really good entry and exit, and good pit stop too. So but just hitting, firing all 8 cylinders here and keep hitting our marks and be as consistent as we can, and just hopefully the mishaps stay away and we keep having good luck, good runs.
Talk about the format and the strategy for this race, because most of the the 1.5 milers we've seen thus far was pretty much a full 200 mile distance thereabouts, 130 laps at Atlanta, 136 at Vegas. Here, just a 90 lap show, very, very quick here at Homestead, especially when you take into account that at Auto Club, the last time we were on at Oval, we nearly hit the 2-hour marker that is used in this series. But a short 90 lap race here today, how does that change your approach coming into this?
Yeah, I was surprised that we were running as short as a race that we did here, because I was expecting it to be like 130 laps or something like that, similar to Atlanta, because they're both 1.5 miles. But it made it a one-stop race for us instead of typically we'll see like a 2-stop race. So the strategy, it kind of made it a little bit easier, even with the first yellow we had. Just kind of split it down the middle and just kind of whoever flinches first, just follow suit and go from there. And so just managing tires, taking care of our stuff, taking care of the car throughout the whole race, and kind of just letting everything come to us.
Well, thank you for joining us, David, and congratulations on pretty much keeping up a streak of dominance thus far this season. You kept the momentum going from before the winter break and carried it right into 2019 and should pretty much comfortably have the points lead coming out of this. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that number 42 car that makes it so dang quick?
Yeah, I'd just like to wish everyone a happy new year. Good to start off on a right foot there. And everybody Aftermath Motorsports, with Trey Edson, AJ O'Rourke, running with us tonight, their support throughout the whole race, thanks to them. Sponsors on the car, racingbids.com. If you go on Facebook and search up them on their Racing Bids, you'll find that we have live auctions every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So there's like sheet metal, die-cast, hero cards, trading cards, hats. There's all kinds of stuff on there. You can go try to put your bids in and go win some cool stuff. So go check that out, 7 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. If you go also to sellwithracingbiz.com, you can buy and sell racing collectibles and make a little bit extra cash that way too. So go check that out as well, sellwithracingbiz.com. Monster Energy, Gary Mercer Trucking, JD Lair, JDR Graphics for Paint My Car. You guys for broadcasting, all the fans and friends watching, thank you guys.
Well, there he was, Mr. David Comstock, still continuing to dominate this race and definitely dominating the sponsor plugs. The only interview I think we have all year that sounds like a real-life interview with sponsors, as many as were lifted off. So, next interviewee we have, the third-place finisher of the night, that double 6 car of Steve Sheehan. Steve, it was a very good run for you. Best run thus far of the season. Qualified on that front row incredibly strong and pretty much had everything going for you the entire way. It felt like you were always in with the lead pack. You got the pretty much perfect pit strategy going. Were able to get your way after fighting with Jason and Timothy a little bit late up to a third-place finish really in the closing laps. Talk me through your night.
Hey, guys. Yeah, it was a decent night. Decent run for me in this specific series. Qualified good. I knew Jason would be fast. I knew the same handful of guys are usually fast everywhere. They got this car figured out. Just wanted to stay close. There's a certain way to drive this car to really optimize the way the tires wear, and I just didn't do it good enough tonight. And you could see towards the later end of the run, Nelson kind of took off. Same with David and Trey both. And I elected to stay out a few extra laps to try to catch a yellow. It didn't happen, so I pit, and once I came out of the pits, I realized how much time I lost. So, still a solid run.
And talking about this sort of championship as it folds, because of course it's sort of been 3 weeks since we've seen you guys in action. Homestead here tonight, first race, of course, back. A couple of interesting races coming up, Chicagoland, Dega, and then Pocono. How do you set yourself up kind of mentally, and what are your approach to those next 3 races? Chicagoland, of course, is the usual kind of, it's a cookie cutter. It's going to be what it's going to be. Dega and Pocono, though, big 2.5 mile super speedways. Of course, Dega being a plate track and Pocono just being the way it is. Those are big tracks for these Xfinity cars. What's your sort of approach to those?
Same as this one. I'm in a different position than I am in the K&N series with this league, where I believe there's a chase point system. So for me, I need to go for a win. That's why tonight, as good as third is, get to talk with you guys. I really need a win if I want to go somewhere with the chase. I believe there's one. Could be mistaken. But so going into the rest of the season, it's going to be, I'm going for wins. So got to do it.
Well, Mr. Steve Sheehan comes away with a strong third place finish. Steve, before we let you go, who gets it done for that double six?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for covering these races. This league and all the administrations run very well, very professional. So I got to thank those guys, and obviously Kickass Beef Jerky for sponsoring, putting these races on. You know, it's never ceases to amaze anybody that watches the series how clean the races are, how well it's done. Even the K&N series for an entry level, these races are run very well, very clean. So just gotta thank all you guys.
There he was, Steve Sheehan, coming home in that third place finish. And really, Nolan, like you said, there being a chase format really in this championship is going to make things very, very interesting. That kicks in after the 10th race at Darlington, of all places, which has a bit of a Busch Series throwback theme to it. But Kentucky, Indianapolis, and Michigan, 3 very different races to close out a championship.
Absolutely, and each track just drives so shockingly differently. It actually even surprises me sometimes how different the races there can be, and that's definitely going to heat up the end of this season, and it's even going to heat up the couple races leading up to these, races 8, 9, 10, and so forth. These guys are going to start scrapping out for points. In the first few races, you can afford to make little mistakes, cost yourself some points here or there. That's fine, but now we're just about to get into the second half of the season in a race or two. And then people are really going to have to start thinking points-wise. Like, what do I need to do in order to make this happen?
Yep, and as we start working our way towards March, we're going to have interesting ways, we're going to have an interesting view of the ways people are figuring out of making exactly that happen. But that is going to be it for us here tonight on RaceSpotTV for your Kick-Ass Snacks Xfinity Winter Series here from the Sim500 Championship. Been myself, Randy Chineth, and Nolan Rempel up here in the booth with Hugo Louis, pushing all the buttons, making the beautiful camera angles work. Of course, the person making those camera angles is Istvan Ballo at TrackCams22.com. Andy Werner designed the beautiful overlays you see here as Simon Grossman arranged all the ones and zeros in such a way that they would actually work properly in anime, and Nick Tisson for our live timing. We hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.